Hi, this is Dave and welcome to the weekly market video recap. I'm recording this video on Sunday, December the 16th, closing out the week for Friday the 14th, Friday, December the 14th. So let's start off with the Dow Index Futures. If you're not interested in the Dow, then you can look at the DIA ETF, which pretty much tracks the Dow Index Futures. So we're taking a look at the this price action that took place on Friday at the close, and Friday was just a really tight doji day, as you can see by this bar here. And we have this sort of trend line in play here where, you know, this was an extreme, so I didn't take it from there. I took it more from here and from this point here, and you can see the price action is fairly well respected this trend line. Now this trend line is a little bit more pronounced, or you know, it has a higher angle of ascent than what you would really like to see, and is more indicative of a market that is a little bit more momentum based, I guess you could say. You know, that said, it's been a kind of a slow market, but what I mean is, see this angle here, 45-degree angle, where this trend line is, that's a little bit more, you know, where you would like to see. That's where I'm more comfortable, you know, buying pullbacks in that kind of a market. When you get a market like this, where, you know, your trend lines are a little bit more than 45 degrees, you're getting your pullbacks are shallower, they're a little bit harder to buy. You know, it's just a different kind of market environment. So I hope that makes sense. So taking a look at Friday here, so you've had this level that we've been talking about at 13,200, right? And you had this trend line. In last week's video, we were talking about the major resistance being at 13,200, and or possibly the major resistance being at, you know, where the price action meets this trend line. So we chewed through 13,200. We came up to this trend line and we probed above this trend line here on, let's see, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday. We probed above it, and then we came all the way back down to support at, you know, this trend line, this white trend line here that we've identified, and we closed back below 13,200. And we closed the day at, it looks like, 13,163. So at this point in time, we closed really at an area where, you know, we've got potential support, but we're at, you know, the higher end of support. You've got support all the way down to, you know, this 20 period, 21 period exponential moving average down in this area, which would bring you in about 13,050. So you've got support down in there, and you've got, you know, this trend line support, but, you know, you've got this resistance right up overhead. So at this point in time, there's really not a lot to do. The other key point is you've closed above, you know, you held above this 61.8% retracement of this high right here, this high to this low. Now, if we even look at that from, you know, I've identified that subjectively as the intermediate high and low, but even if you look at it from, you know, the major highs to this low, you closed right at or above this 61.8% retracement, which came in at 13,148. You closed at 13,163. So from a fib perspective, we're holding this 61.8% retracement. So that is, you know, more bullish than bearish from a fib perspective. You've still got resistance at 13,200. You've got resistance above this trend line. So in order to get anything going back to the high side, what I think I'm really leaning towards and what I'm looking at is, I would like to see us get back above this level here, these highs, back above that trend line. So essentially hold this trend line to the downside, right? Hold this trend line here, and then get back above this trend line here, and then break above these highs, which are coming in around 13,323. When and if that happens, then what I would be looking to do is I would expect that the market, you know, we'd be able to look at this air between this area here, the resistance at these highs, 13,323, and these other highs back in and around here, right? At around, 13,590, 13,600. So in between these two areas, if we break above this area, there's about 300 Dow points to play with, right? But we're really in high territory. Technically, I think I'm more bullish than bearish on this market because the trending indicator is positive. This fast stochastic rather is in oversold territory, and I'm expecting a bounce out of that area. This stochastic, the slow stochastic, is really in overbought territory. So there's a conflict between those two. But the MACD is really above its zero line now, and the MACD is net positive. So I'm more bullish than bearish on this market, but I'm just trying to sort of see where things are going to settle out, if we're going to come a little bit lower and test some lower support areas, or if we're going to hold these levels and push back, and do one of these up into these levels. So in terms of decision points, we need to hold this support here. We need to hold this support here to stay bullish. If we break above this resistance, then I'd be looking for a test of these most recent highs. Over and beyond that, I really wouldn't want to try and hazard a guess as to where this market might be going. So that's all I have for the Dow today. Let's take a look at some of the other stock index futures and see if they're telling the same story or not. Okay, so taking a look at the S&P futures, you could look at, if you're interested, you could look at the ETF SPY that tracks, essentially these S&P futures. You've got, you had to move down below the 61.8% retracement, but you're holding the 21 exponential moving average over here. So it's still, net bullish. You're trading above the 21 period moving average. That to me is a key line in the sand between long and short on these charts. And you've got the same situation happening with my trending indicator. Fast stochastic is oversold, and the slow stochastic is overbought. So I might have said oversold, but on the Dow, but the slow stochastic here, the cyan and white line, is essentially it's overbought, but the fast stochastic is oversold. Okay, so you have a little bit of conflict there. I'd be expecting some type of a bounce off of these levels. You've got your MACD net positive above its zero line. So this still looks good, but you've got this sort of cup pattern happening here. You've got this kind of cup pattern happening here on the daily chart. This could be a potential handle. I'm looking to see if we're going to break above here again and do this. Now, if we hold these levels here, then at the 21 EMA, then I'd be net bullish on this market. We could come down and probe some of these levels here, but if we hold essentially these higher highs and higher lows and some of these levels in and around here and here, then I would still maintain a bullish outlook on the market and expect some type of Santa Claus rally. The major resistance in the S&P seems to be around this 1430 mark. So we really need, in order to get something going to the high side, we really need to get above 1430 on the S&P future. And then if we take a look at the the Nasdaq futures, or you could look at the QQQ ETF, and it's a little bit less bullish than the other indices. So if we take a look at this, what you can see is you've got what looks to be sort of like a double top here, and here's the major, you have major resistance at its 50% retracement. It couldn't even get above its 50% retracement at around 2680. Okay, so the indicators look a little bit, much the same, although this trending indicator looks really weak, and it almost looks a little bit like a divergence at this double top, where you've got a slightly lower peak here, and you've got, well, I mean, I don't think this actually even got above, this peak didn't really get above this peak. So there's really not much to say here except that the NASDAQ looks a little bit weaker, and it seems to be right at, right at its kind of line in the sand support there. Just going to draw a line here. Somewhere in and around here seems to be its support area. So let's keep this on the chart for next week. Right, somewhere around 2613 seems to be pretty key support. You came down and touched it here, you broke through it here, you touched it, you broke above it. You keep knocking on support's door here. So I think this is a fairly key level in the NASDAQ futures. We need to stay above that level essentially at 2613. Then if we take a look at, that's all I have really for the stock index futures. Let's take a look at the transports, wrong symbol. So the transports are really in a sideways congestion area, as you can see here in this range, but it would be interesting to see the stock market push higher, and for this, for the transports to kind of confirm and break above, this sort of box play and kind of shoot to the high side. That would sort of confirm that, maybe the stock indices are going higher if they, if they both go together. So that's essentially what I'm looking at for the transports. This is the transport index on the daily chart, and that's kind of what I'd like to see if, the stock indices are going higher. So that's interesting. I'll keep an eye on that, going forward. And then I'm going to take a look at the, let's take a look at the dollar index. So the dollar index is at the bottom of its wedge. It just is really just kind of building up, in this sort of wedge pattern here. And it seems to be just kind of holding on, to these support areas. 79.28 sort of came down and tested close to that area, but it really held this downtrend line. And, you've got support below, you've got resistance above. We're really still looking for direction, out of this sort of wedge pattern here. So when and if we get that, that will kind of really tell the story on, what the dollar index wants to do. Is it going to go higher or go lower? Right now it looks more, bearish than bullish, but it's at support. So anything can happen off those support levels. Those support levels appear to be long-term support levels as well. Yeah. So you can see here, if you zoom out, you can see this is a long-term support level. In fact, I should probably give it a little bit more prominence. There's a long-term support level in and around there. Okay, so that's really where we're at in the dollar index. So let's flip over to its nemesis, the euro. And I just say that it's its nemesis because it essentially tracks inverse of the dollar index. So we've got this key resistance level of $1.30. We're now above it. So we're, the $1.30 is expected to be key support now. We've been yo-yoing around this level, back and forth, since the beginning of September. So, that's, we've got 3 months behind us now, September, October, November, December, almost 4 months now. And we're just yo-yoing around this $1.30 level. And you can see now we're at what appears to be, the intermediate resistance. We closed right at this resistance level, going back into this level back in here. So in order to get anything going on the high side, if we break like $1.3189, I'd say $1.32. If we break $1.32 decisively, then that's really going to be your clue that, the euro is winning out and the dollar is kind of losing out. So we're holding this uptrend line. We're above $1.30, which is now essentially, let me just change the color here, which is now essentially support again. And it's still a key level, and now we're just testing $1.32. So question's going to be, can we get above $1.32 and get anything going to the high side, or are we going to pull back down into support somewhere around $1.30 or this rising, rising trend line here? So that's all I really have for the major currencies this week and for the stock indices. We're heading into the holiday season, and we're probably going to expect some low volume moves. So I'm not really I'm really just going to be kind of lightening up and just watching the markets a little bit more and getting some year-end work done here, and maybe doing some day trades when the opportunity presents itself. But at this point in time, I'm just kind of watching these key levels. I'm not really interested in establishing any longer-term trades at this point in time, but just kind of keeping an eye on these levels. So that's all I have this week. I hope it helps, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the next video update. We don't have a meetup coming up this month because of the Christmas holidays, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the new year. But I'll keep running these videos on the weekends just to sort of update where we're at in the markets and my thoughts on those levels and what the market is doing. So good trading, good investing, and we will see you at the next video update. Be well.